Okay, how's the sound? Can you hear me all right? Okay, great. Then we'll get started. This is the Springs Forth Faith Formation Seminar. It's good to see the people that are here, and it's good to know that there's other people out there that I can't see, but hopefully you can see and hear us. And we'll do our seminar here on things that you can do in your congregation that are creative, fun, related to the Bible, that are for all ages, and that help us explore how God rocked the world in the Bible story times, as well as our world today. So we decided we wanted to start this seminar by showing you how really cool and techie we are. And so we got a young person from Bethel College to help us with a game called Cahoots, and we were going to be really cool and techie, and you would all be using your cell phones and your Kindles and whatever you brought with you to play this game. So that's all wonderful, except that the weather is actually stronger in this world than cool techie things, and our young person is in Denver, Colorado, because she was flying home from a vacation, and the weather controlled the flights, and she didn't get home last night. So we're going to do this anyway, but we'll do it just more like the old-fashioned way with a slideshow and some questions. So I'm going to ask questions. They'll be up here. Okay, first question. I'd like for you to answer this question. Raise your hand and tell me what the answer is. The question is, Bethel College is named for a rock, Goshen College is named after some land, and Heston College is named after a mountain. True or false? True. We have one answer that says true. We have another true, and in reality, I believe it's false. Heston College is named after a person named Hess and the town that that Heston College is in. So, all right, first trick question. There's more fun ones to come. Okay. True or false? After his dream connection with God, Jacob repented of his sins and became a new man. Yes? Oh, okay, well, here's the question. There it is. True or false? Make a guess. 50% chance. The Jacob story. Okay? Nobody's going to risk it because they're not quite sure, because they kind of know about Jacob and he kind of did different things, but in my way of thinking, it's false. And one of the reasons I'm giving is that when Jacob had that wonderful connection with God in relationship to that pillow that became a pillar, after that, he promised God to give 1/10 of his material possessions. But the promise came after he said, if you, God, will be with me and help me on my journey. So Jacob was still being an if man and still wanting to wheel and deal with God. So he wasn't entirely a new man. So we're going to call that one false. The Lord told Joshua how to create a memory device. The device was a rock pillar, a dozen stones, a path of stones through a river, or a flash drive. A dozen stones, which is B, and that is correct. A dozen stones that were piled up at the side of the shore so that when children in the future generations would ask, what about these stones, they could tell the story. Absolutely right. True or false? The song Teach Your Children by Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young is based on the story of Joshua and the crossing over rocks. Surely some of you remember this song. You remember the words in it. Is it based on Joshua and the rocks? No guesses? It's false. It's a nice tie-in, and when we talk about the lesson, we tie it in for people that are reading the lesson today, but the song doesn't talk about Joshua at all. True or false? When Jesus talked about houses built on rock and sand, he basically said, I know this is asking a lot of you, but give it a try. False. We got a quick false on that one, and that's correct. Jesus didn't say, oh, well, these are some good ideas, and hopefully you can do them. Jesus said, you need to do it. You need to make this happen. Okay, true or false? If Jesus had told this story in Kansas, he might have used the example of Flint Hills Rock and Gossel Gumbo. Somebody in this audience, I think, grew up in Gossel. Would that person choose to answer this question? Okay, what we're trying to do here is draw a comparison between what Jesus talked about and what we have actually experienced in our lives. So that if Jesus was here today, he might have used that example because it's rock versus sand that doesn't hold up. So I included this one because in our stories, we do everything we can to relate the Bible story to our lives. And so many of the examples that we give in our lessons connect to lives today. Okay, true or false? When Jesus said, Peter, you rock, that was the beginning of the phrase we still use today when we like someone or something. Any ideas? I think I'm seeing some heads shaking no. And of course not. We don't go back to that. And when Jesus said, Peter, you rock, he didn't mean it like you are a really well, he did mean that you're a really cool person. He did mean it that way, but he meant it literally, rock as in solid, I will build my church on you. So there is a double meaning when Jesus talked to Peter about it. And we use this a lot in our lessons. We're talking about how God rocks and how God and Jesus talk to people about how they can rock the world. Okay, we're still talking about houses built on rock and sand. So when Jesus talked about houses built on rock and sand, Peter talked about a spiritual house built out of living stones. True or false? That's true. Yes, I'm seeing nods in the audience, and that is true. So when God rocked the world with the greatest news ever, women were entrusted to stand in front of the television camera with this breaking news. So let's pretend that there were actually television cameras there as you answer this question. True? False? It's true. It was women, according to the Gospel of John, that were chosen to spread the word. And finally, true or false, Springs Forth has resources available on these stories for free. And yes, of course, that's true. That's why we're here, is to tell you about our resources. So Springs Forth Faith Formation, there's our description. Innovative faith resources to energize believers and inspire them to share God's love in their communities. I'm going to just leave this up here just for a little bit for you to view it just real quickly, to read through it very quickly, and then we're going to go on to a PowerPoint that talks a little bit more about our resources. This includes our mission statement and just tells you a little bit more about who we are. Springs Forth Faith Formation started with creating 13 lessons called Detectives of Divinity. And those lessons were for midweek classes. And then we expanded that and created actually 3 different units that are for all ages. And so when a congregation wants to use our materials, they can purchase them for $50, and they get 5 lessons that are for all ages, children, youth, adults. And so that is one of the uniquenesses of our materials, is that when you purchase it, you've got materials for all ages. Okay, check out this video.
There's a lot of mysteries out there, and any good mystery needs a good detective. That's where I come in. I'm no ordinary gumshoe. No, My specialty is looking for what God is doing in the world, in the ordinary and the extraordinary. I'm a detective of divinity.
So, what makes me a detective, you ask? Well, I've got the sign right here, detective, so that's pretty official. Also, I've got a magnifying glass. Shoot, I've got 3 of them. I've also got a telephone that I make detective calls on. I've got a notebook. I write detective things in. And I've got file cabinets full of clues and case files and detective stuff. I should really clean those out. But the most important tool in my detective work is this book, right here. The Bible is a must for any detective of divinity. The clues are all here. It's up to you to find them. The truth is, there's evidence of God everywhere, and us detectives of divinity are out there finding it and telling everybody we know about the good news. It's our job. So, you're interested in becoming a detective of divinity, just like me? Well, I'm pretty busy. Usually that phone is ringing all the time. Just off the hook, all the time. Yeah, but there's so much evidence of God out there that we're always looking for more detectives. So join me as we explore this book, as well as the big, beautiful world around us, as detectives of divinity.
So Detectives of Divinity is fun because when you use it with children's classes, you can do a lot of fun things with the kids. You can make them detectives. You can make T-shirts for them. We did wristbands for them when we did this at Tabor. We got pencils that they could use put on their ear if they wanted to be real detectives. We found different ways to help them think about being detectives and explore God in the Bible stories as well as their own world. And congregations that have used this are talking about, the kids like the fact that there's things that they can take home with them. They can wear the wristband. What we did with the shirts is we actually awarded a shirt when they completed their Bible memory work. And so that gave them something to work for and gave them something really cool to wear after they learned the Bible verses. So Bible memory work is also a part of our curriculum. A lot of us are old enough that we grew up doing Bible memory work, and we believe that it's served us well to have those verses in our heads through the years. And so we think that that's important for children these days as well. And so each one of the lessons has Bible memory work as part of it and encourage kids to learn it. Now, sometimes if you involve a song, that will really help you learn the memory work. And so we've also found songs that really help kids learn it. And when we ask them to recite the Bible verse, they would think about it for a little bit and then they'd sing the song, because music, has a way of settling into kids' and adults' hearts and minds, and the song is there even when you're not sure about remembering the verses or the words. So, like I said earlier, Detectives of Divinity 13 grew into the 3 units that we have available now. One of the units is called Smelly Camels. Okay, I'll get to that in just a second. One of the units called Smelly Camels and More, and the reason it's called Smelly Camels and More is because one of the lessons is called Smelly Camels, and it's related to Rebecca. Rebecca had quite the experience of having to deal with smelly camels as part of being discovered as the future wife for Jacob. So that's Smelly Camels and More that's why it's called that. Another one's called Nighttime Sleuthing. And this one is about Nicodemus, who becomes a sleuth as he looks for Jesus. And so we called that whole unit that because of that one part of it. Each one of the units includes both Old Testament and New Testament stories, because we want people that are studying this to get the broad spectrum of how God rocked the world, both in Old Testament and New Testament as well as currently. These are called Detectives VBS Plus, and the reason for that name is because when we first wrote them, we were thinking about Bible school. We were thinking that people need something for Bible school, and we added the plus actually for two reasons. One is it's not just for Bible school. Anytime you have any group of people together studying the Bible, this will work. It's also plus because it's not just for what we normally think of Bible school, which is children. Again, there are lessons here for youth as well as for adults. And so when it says Detectives VBS Plus, that means it's for more ages and it's not just for VBS. So we were trucking right along and making this available to congregations to do in Bible school and faith formation settings, and then COVID hit. And people didn't get together, people weren't in congregations, people weren't in groups, and here we were with all of our, what we thought were fun, creative materials. And so we regrouped and decided, well, somebody was hopefully doing faith formation somewhere, and if it's not happening in the congregation, hopefully it's happening at home, and if it's not happening at home, it might be because people don't know what to do. And so we created a version called God Rocks Home Connections. And this Home Connections is short ways for families to show this at home as a family. And it includes a very short lesson plan and a video that goes with it. So that if all you can do is set your child in front of the video screen for a few minutes and press the button, you at least have that many minutes of a child getting some sort of Bible input. So I'm going to show you one of those.
Okay, jump. Good boy. Good boy. Can you jump? Jump. Good job. Oops.
I just love watching Baxter do his tricks.
Me too. It's fun when he does what he's supposed to do, but this took a lot of practice. A lot of practice.
Oh, I can't believe this. It's happening again.
What are you doing and what are you mumbling?
You and Baxter are practicing by a sand pile.
Yes, and?
And once again, we have a God wink right in front of us.
A sand pile is a God wink?
Have you ever heard the story about the two people? One who built a house on sand and one who built it on rock?
Nope.
Oh, it's a great story, and it's all about you and Baxter practicing together.
Baxter and I are not in the Bible.
No, but, well, let's do the story, and then we'll talk about that. This time, one of us is a person who stands on the sand, and one of us stands on that rock.
Well, I have been a rock, so I'll stand on the rock.
Lucky you. Are you sure you don't know this story?
No, why?
You'll find out. Anyway, that puts me on the sand. Oh, okay. This story is about two people who wanted to build a house. The first one built it on a pile of sand. It was a great house. The person loved her house. But then a horrible storm came, and there was a flood. And the more it flooded, the squishier the sand got. And it got more and more squishy until the house finally fell down.
Are you okay?
No, I'm not okay.
I'm so sorry.
My house fell down, and I'm wet. The second person who built a house built it on a rock. This person loved her house too. But then a horrible storm came, and there was a flood. And lots of person's house was just fine because it was built on a rock. And that is the end of the story.
Really? What does it mean? And what about me and Baxter?
Well, let me get up, dry off a bit, and we'll talk about that.
So this story is in the Bible? Why?
Well, Jesus told that story to illustrate that when people hear his words but don't follow them, they are like the house built on the sand. But when they hear his words and obey them, they are like the house built on the rock.
I don't know much about Jesus, but it seems to me that he says a lot of things that are hard to put into practice. And you still haven't told me what this has to do with me and Baxter.
Practice! You just said it. Baxter knows his tricks because you practice them together. You love each other, and you are helpful to each other, and you support each other. Oh, he wants to do what you say. It's all because of the love and the practice. It's the same with us and Jesus. Jesus loves us. And because we love Jesus, we practice doing what his words say. Then we are building our lives on a solid rock. It's because of the love and the practice.
Oh, wow. Well, that makes sense. That sure gives me a lot to think about.
Thank you so much for helping me act out another Bible story.
Hey, maybe Baxter and I should go on another walk. Is there anything you'd like us to look for? You know, something connected to another Bible story?
I love it! Yes, go for a walk and tell me what you see. I'm sure it'll be just what we need.
Come on, Baxter.
This video is about Jesus being the solid rock and what that means in our lives. My name is Carol Duerksen. I am a faith formation curriculum writer and teacher in our congregation, and I love to hear and tell and write stories.
And I am Doris Unruh. I am a retired school teacher. I am also a faith formation teacher. I also am a grandma, most importantly, and a family babysitter.
So today in our story, Doris, we talk about Jesus being a solid rock, which means following Jesus is what we do.
Right.
And I'm thinking that one of the most basic things about following Jesus is being kind, as far as what children would understand. So I know that you have a lot of contact with children in your babysitting hours. And I'm wondering, are there times when they're actually not 100% kind to each other?
There are always times when they're not 100% kind to each other. So, you know, being a babysitter is a little trickier when you're grandma and when you're special great aunt, because you don't want to ruin that relationship. So I separate them, and then I find out what's going on. Usually it's because, you know, we don't want to share, or somebody wanted it, and, you know, that whole thing. So we talk about the problem. We try to figure out what is the solution, try to come up with the solution, decide we're not going to hit anymore. We're just going to, you know, separate. And usually the conversation has to include being able to share and being able to wait your turn, those types of things. So then they apologize and we get back to playing together, and usually things will go on okay. So back to the story. Got to get back to the story. So in the video, remember that the one person stood on the sand and the one person stood on the solid rock. Well, the person that stood in the sand, and the water came and the water came, and all of a sudden the sand dissolves and that person falls down. It's kind of the same thing if we build our house on the sand and we're not building it on the solid rock, like the person that stood on the rock and the water came and they stood on the rock and nothing happened. They were solid. So that's the same thing. We want to build our relationships with God on solid rock. And so we need to remember that while we're standing on the rock, that God is there for us and always will be there for us as long as we remember God. and that we pay attention to who we need to pay attention to. And so being kind is one of those things, but we also need God in our lives for our personal rock.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the being kind, because it reminded me of a story that happened to me just recently. Actually, it happened right before the election in the United States. So I ran into a friend of mine, and we started talking, and we were talking about what was happening in the United States and the polarization and the diversity and all that stuff. And she said, my children, they come home from school and they say, "Oh, Mom, so-and-so, their parents are going to vote for so-and-so." And then my friend said, she looked at her children and she said, "But dear, are they kind to you? Are they nice to you? Do they treat you with kindness?" She said, "Because that's all that really matters." And I thought, wow, in a time when there's so much polarization of people not getting along and disagreeing, what she was saying is that really important is the kindness. And she was saying that to her children and saying, doesn't really matter all those different opinions, be nice to each other. And I thought, that's just incredible, because that's what Jesus would have said. And Jesus actually did say that, and it's called the Golden Rule, and which is basically treat others the way you want to be treated. And that seems like such a easy but hard thing to do, and to teach children. Treat others the way you want to be treated. Be kind, follow Jesus, stand on that rock. So let's have a closing prayer about that.
Okay.
Jesus, help us to build our lives on the solid rock, which is you and your teachings. Help us to be kind. Amen. So there are 5 of those videos, and one of the things that we really wanted to do and try to accomplish in them was to help parents and grandparents, people that are working with their kids at home, to understand that you don't have to know everything in order to teach your children or grandchildren about God and about Jesus. It's a matter of relating what happens in your daily lives to what happens to how God relates to them. And so that's what we were trying to communicate in the last part, where we take, Doris, who's just busy working with kids at different times, and talk about the fact that it's the small things. It's the way you talk to your children. And you don't have to think that just because they aren't going into Sunday school or faith formation right now that they're not getting any Bible teaching. You can help make that teaching happen, and it doesn't have to be real complicated. So these 5 videos are available free for people that want to use them at home or in their congregations, or however they would like to utilize them. So we were still trying to figure out ways to connect with people. And some people are visual, and some people like to watch videos, but some people also want something in writing. Some of us who have Kindle still want to buy a real book when it comes to reading certain books. And so we felt like doing a magazine that could be printed off and handed out to people, or that could just be accessed online and read, would be another way to get the word out about these 5 stories. And so we created, again, 5 magazines on the 5 themes. And each magazine is a certain story, and there's 2 different magazines for each story. So in this case, this is God Rocks, Peter and the Living Stones, and one of the magazines focuses on Jesus calling Peter a rock, and another one focuses more on the living stones aspect, because both of those are very, very important parts of this particular rock story. Each magazine has an editorial that kind of expands on the story, and it has an activity or a thought that youth can do on their own or in a group if they happen to be in a group, and one for children and another one for adults. So again, it's very short, but it's a way to introduce the Bible story to the different age groups. And these are the covers of the other magazines. Joshua and the Crossing Over Rocks. God Rocks the Pillow, or Became a Pillar. Jesus and the Wisdom Rock, which is the one that you just saw. And God Rocks the Rolled Away Stone, which of course is the Easter story. This is our information. We're on Facebook. We have a website. And of course, you can always email. And these are the ways to be in touch with us. There's a couple of other things that I'm going to do for handouts that will help you have something to take home. And those of you that are watching on live stream, we will give you the opportunity to email us, and you can see up here our email address, so please feel free to do that if you want any of these. So what we're handing out here in person is a folder that includes a sample session that for all of the groups. It's one of the sample sessions from Detectives of Divinity, and also a sample of the magazine, so you can actually hold that and see that. And then the third thing is a poster, so that if you're a part of a congregation and you have families in your congregation that might want to access this, there are tear-off strips at the bottom, so that if you put this poster up in your church and people see it, they can tear off the strip, which is our contact information. And that way they can contact us directly. Because honestly, one of the challenges that we face is that getting the word out to people, the first most obvious way to do this is through congregations. But when it gets to a congregation, it goes into the email box of the pastor or the administrative assistant or whoever it is that catches those emails. And then that person makes the decision of whether or not to pass it on. And we're trying to reach families directly so that they have an opportunity to access these materials. And that's why the tear-off strips on the poster then give families a way to just be in touch with us directly and give us the opportunity to send these free materials if they want them. Okay, so at this point, now you've seen the materials and you have some things in hand. I would be open to questions or comments, either from people here at Faith or people that are online that are watching us. Do you have comments or questions or anything that you want to throw out to the group at this point? And we'll answer or respond as we know how. A little bit more about the materials. I know we've talked a lot about the free materials, which is the magazines and the videos. When congregations choose to use this for their classes, the 5 lessons, again, for all ages, are $50 for the 5 lessons. So, depending on what people are used to spending for Bible school materials, that's very, very reasonable. You would get 5 lessons that you could use for Bible school if you chose to do that for the children, and you would still have the lessons for youth and adults to use when you want to. And there are some congregations that are doing this all at one time. They'll take a weekend retreat and do everything so that they're all studying the same thing, or some of them will do it for several Sundays, for a month, or for a quarter, and find ways to have everybody in the congregation talking about the same story. And these materials can give you a way to start that out. Doris, do you have anybody on there that has any questions? Okay. Doris, yes. .com,
It's written 3 different ways in our material, and if you try to do that on a computer, if you don't have the right way, you don't get in. So I wonder what the correct way is. One of the ways is listed on this page
That's the email, I believe, right? Is that what?
Well, it's email and www.springsforth.
Okay, .com. Okay.
And that's different than his page,
Okay.
and that's different than what's up on the screen.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I'll show you. Springsforth.com has got a small F on here. And on the screen, it's all capital letters.
Okay, in general, when you're doing it on a computer, the caps shouldn't matter that much if you're going to a website. If you're Googling it on a website, the upper lowercase shouldn't make a difference. So, no, that's fine. I appreciate that because it could be me typing it and it's a typo. I mean, this could happen as well. But yeah, it shouldn't matter as far as upper and lowercase if you're Googling it. But if you're going to the website, it's springsforth.com. Yeah, and that should get you there. And the website, yeah, sure. And the website will have free resources on it. It'll also give you the opportunity to view one of the sessions if you want to look at one as you're making the decision of whether or not to use the material. Yeah. And the code there, which I, being an old person, is still learning about that. The code on there, the scan, enables you to get straight to the website as well. So young people know all about that. That's why Doris and I and Dorothy and those of us that are involved with Springforth, we've brought in younger people. We've just now really started revamping up the Facebook page. And if you are a Facebook person and you find us on Facebook, the first thing you'll notice that we're doing is we're sharing faith stories from our board members, because we want you to get to know our board members and who we are and what we're about. And after we've seen and heard, and you've seen on Facebook faith stories of the board members, we'll start putting up some of the other materials. You'll be able to see some of the videos that we've made, like the one you saw here. We'll find other things to put on Facebook because we realize that a large number of people access things on Facebook, and that's part of the way we need to promote ourselves. So we're young. We started in 2017, and so to be a nonprofit that's that young, we are learning along the way, but we have a lot of things that we're very excited about and that we have ourselves used and have enjoyed using and seeing people interact with it. So our goal now is to get the word out so a lot of other people can be using it as well. Okay, if I'll give one last chance for comments or questions from anyone here. Yes, Dorothy. Yes, yes. Thank you. Okay, I think we'll call that a seminar. We'll finish it up, and I thank you for coming. Appreciate your time. I know that you had other choices to make, and it was good to see you here. And we have one more thing to do, and this has the potential to be a lot of fun for at least one congregation. We're going to give you the opportunity to put your name in a drawing, and we'll just take your email address, and if you're catching us live stream, we'd invite you to send us to the email address, send us your email, and we'll include you in the drawing as well. And this drawing is for customized curriculum. So if you're a part of a congregation and you're intrigued with our curriculum, and you have ideas of how you might want to use it in your congregation, but you would like it more customized, you don't just want to buy something as it stands now, this drawing is for us to customize some curriculum for you. And I think that's as far as I'll say, because obviously it'll be different based on who we're talking to. But that's what the drawing is for, and we'll hand out cards here for you to put your email in if you want to be a part of that. And again, use our email address to send us your email and your contact info if you want to be a part of that drawing virtually. I think at this point I'll wrap it up and hope to hear from you at some point if we can work with you. Thanks a lot.